Well, after Aliens became a smash hit and blew everybody's expectations away with what a sequel to Alien could be, and on top of that garnered an Academy Award nomination for Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, Fox thought, yeah, we could do at least one more of these, and the results are complicated. Alien 3. Now, Alien 3 came out in 1992. It was directed by David Fincher, and I like David Fincher. I think he's incredibly talented. Probably my favorite film of his is Seven, and that movie for me is just endlessly rewatchable. I love the style and tone of that movie, and to have him come on and do an Alien movie, even though this is very early in his career, is really not that different of a origin story from Ridley Scott in the original Alien. He kind of came on after doing some commercial work. But this movie had a very troubled production history, first off. Because after the success of Aliens, Fox really wanted to do a follow-up, but James Cameron was off doing Terminator 2. His career was just really taken off, so he couldn't come back. It just seems like producers and writers were all throwing things into a hat, different ideas that they've had, and they've cycled through multiple scripts. Before we even get to the shooting script that they used for this movie, there was a lot of different ideas that just kind of fell by the wayside. And you can kind of tell early on, because this movie definitely shifts gears from the tone of the previous movie. I actually really like the tone of this movie. It's a bit more somber than Aliens was. It does harken back more to the original Alien, whereas we're on this isolated place. The aliens here, it's only one alien, and we just need to kill this thing before it kills us. We gotta find a way to do that. So I like that aspect of it, but the first issue I have is that it completely undoes the family building ending of the last movie. And I know a lot of people take a big issue with this, and it's why I think a lot of people just completely write off Alien 3 as just not a good movie. I don't fully agree. I think there's some merit in Alien 3. You just kind of have to sift through some questionable editing, some questionable studio interference, some questionable rewrites, and there are some nuggets of a good Alien movie in here. But unfortunately, when the movie opens up with Hicks and Newt dying in this fire on the spacecraft, and Ripley again being forced out of cryosleep after crash landing on this prison planet, I can see how people may not get on board with that, because we got so invested with Hicks and Newt and Ripley as this family in the previous movie, and now it's just kind of undone, and it's undone in kind of an unceremonious way. They're killed off before the credits are even done rolling. It's just very abrupt and jarring, and even though I do wish that they wrote it differently, that they did survive and we have another adventure with the three of them, for the movie that we got and for the sake of stakes and tension, I understand why they were killed off. And I think for the direction that this movie goes in, with the prison planet and the inmates being all rapists and murderers, I think having Ripley be alone in that scenario adds to the suspense and terror and just uncomfortable vibe that this place gives off. Whereas if she had Hicks, she has someone to kind of look after her, protect her from all these dangerous men. And while we're at it, let's talk about this prison planet, because I think it's a cool idea to have this all-male prison planet. They're the most dangerous, they're the most violent people that you just put away indefinitely at the other side of the galaxy. And then you have Ripley, the only woman that they've seen in years, possibly decades, crash lands on this planet, and now we have this real human threat as well as the extraterrestrial threat. And in my first Alien video, I talked a lot about the sexual assault nature of this alien and a lot of the undertones. And I don't think it's a coincidence that that subtext is brought up with the type of criminals that these prisoners are. I think that's all really interesting, adds more fear, more suspense, because she doesn't know if she can trust these guys. Once the alien starts terrorizing everyone, they kind of have to band together, but even then, you have that tension, because these aren't space marines, these aren't disciplined people, these are convicts, murderers. They might just as easily turn on each other as turn on her, or just do their own thing and try to survive, which some of them do. And I think when moments like that happen, when you see the evil of these prisoners manifest and their malicious nature, that's when this movie really succeeds. And it puts you in a very interesting place as an audience member, because you completely sympathize with Ripley. She's the point of view character. You're in her head for most of this movie. You're seeing everything through her eyes, which works phenomenally well. It helps to add the fear. But also when the alien starts picking off these guys, you kind of have mixed emotions. Part of you wants to see these guys, these horrible people, get retribution for all the horrible things they've done in their life. But on the other hand, you know that there really aren't that many guys. I think there's 25 prisoners, 2 administrative people, one of which played by Brian Glover, who I immediately recognized from American Werewolf in London. He's awesome in that movie, and in this movie, he brings a really good commanding presence, as well as a little bit of comic relief to this role. I just really liked him, and I did miss him after he died fairly early on. I kind of wish they kept him alive a bit longer, much more than his second in command, 85, who has to step up in his absence. And his performance is just a little less memorable. It feels like like a watered down version of the kind of performance that Brian Glover was giving in the beginning of this movie. So there really aren't that many people on the prison planet, which again adds to the claustrophobic, isolated nature of these movies. In the first movie, there was only 7. I don't remember how many Space Marines we had, but that was probably maybe a dozen people max. Here, there's 25, so we're getting a bit bigger, which means more cannon fodder, more people that can kind of unceremoniously get picked off by the alien. We don't want too many of them to get picked off, even if they are rapists and murderers and just horrible people, because you, through the eyes of Ripley, recognize that she needs their help. She needs other bodies to orchestrate these plans to try to kill this alien, because she just can't do it by herself. She needs a team of people if they're gonna survive. So even though she can't really trust these guys, she needs to figure out a way to work with them. And the only person on this whole planet that she actually does trust, that earns her trust, actually seems like a decent enough guy, is the doctor, and he's played by Charles Dance, who's Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones, and he's really good in this movie. And you buy the romance that blooms between the two of them. You get his backstory, that he was a doctor, he became addicted to morphine, he caused the death of some people, and now he's disgraced, and the only place that he could get a job doing what he's good at is on this prison planet. And the way they tease that out throughout this movie, I think, is done really well. You really get invested in this character. But there's one thing about this character that never fully satisfied me, and I think it's because the whole time I'm watching this movie, I couldn't help but think of, what if this dude was an android? Just like Ash and just like Bishop in the last movie, Ripley has always had a really strange relationship with androids. In the first movie, it was just a complete shock. It was someone that she thought she knew and then turned on her, and from then on just never trusted androids. But she knew they were just lackeys of the company, that they didn't care about her, and that they were dangerous. Then in Alien, she meets Bishop, and she's initially mistrusting of him, but eventually they form a bond and form a friendship. And here, if they had made Charles Dance a robot, if they had revealed that when he eventually gets attacked by the xenomorph and dies, when he starts getting torn apart, you start to see the milky white substance of blood instead of red human blood. That's when she realizes that the most intimate human comfort that she's had on this prison planet is artificial. I think that would have been a really neat conclusion to her arc, where she starts off as against androids, befriends androids, and then eventually becomes intimate with androids and learns to trust them. And maybe Charles Dance is a more advanced model than the Bishop model or the Ash model, which were relatively primitive. This one can really pass as a human. And I just think it would have been an interesting little twist to throw in, and just to see how Ripley would react to that given her history with androids. This movie really doesn't have any. Sure, you get torn up Bishop relaying information later in this movie, and that's actually a really impressive effect. It's a practical Lance Hendrickson look-alike puppet thing. That's really it. Even when you get Bishop as not Bishop the droid, but Bishop the man who designed the droid at the end of this movie to try to take Ripley away, take her back to the company to get this alien that's been gestating inside of her ripped out, which I haven't even talked about yet, but we'll get there. That Bishop, I was also fully expecting to be lying about his humanity, and when he gets clubbed in the head, I was expecting to see the white blood squirting out, revealing that he is an android, but no, you see red blood, and he is human. So again, I feel like this movie is really missing something. They had 2 different opportunities to reveal an android, and they kind of just didn't. They opted not to. But going back to the prisoners really quick, and the threat of them as rapists and murderers, and how that affects Ripley, they also throw in this aspect of these prisoners where they're religious zealots, that at some point they've adopted this fundamentalist Christian religion that's kind of vague. It's not fully explained what they believe or how they believe it. It's not really explored. It's just kind of a vague religious coat of paint that they put on top of these prisoners, to which I don't really know what purpose they did that, because if anything, it makes them less threatening, where you know that attacking Ripley goes against their creed and that they have this moral or spiritual barrier. It really, for me, doesn't make them as threatening, because they have a moral standard that they try to live by, and as long as they hold to that, Ripley is perfectly safe. Whereas if they were just atheistic, generic criminals, there would be a lot more tension. You'd never know what might set them off. If she said something or looked at them a certain way, it would just be game over for her. But now you have this religious code that they all live by, and it seems like they've really taken this seriously, that Ripley is really in no danger. It makes that one scene where some of them do try to attack her feel almost out of place. Now, it's not completely out of place, because you do understand their background, and you know that there is always an opportunity for them to backslide and fall into temptation and all that. So the threat is never completely gone, but I still feel like it would have been heightened even more if they didn't have that religious belief to guide 90% of their actions throughout this movie. But now let's talk about the xenomorph in this movie, because that's really what this movie is about. It's about a xenomorph terrorizing everyone on this prison planet, and the xenomorph is all right. It's all cool alien stuff that we've seen before. There's a couple new twists. For one, the xenomorph gets birthed from a dog in this movie and not a human like we've seen in every other version, so that's a little different. And the design for this runner alien is also a little different. It's a little bit more canine, although the way it's shot and the way the effects look in this movie just don't help the situation. It just kind of, for me, looks like any other xenomorph that we've seen before. It doesn't look that unique. And when you look back in Aliens, when they did the xenomorph queen, you can really tell that the xenomorph queen is a different type of xenomorph than the ones that we've seen before. It looks significantly different. This one just doesn't. It just maybe has arms that are a little bit longer, legs that are a little bit more canine, and the way it runs on all fours is a little different. But ultimately, when it's in the close-ups, you really couldn't tell that it's any different. And the first couple times I saw this movie, I didn't know that it was supposed to be anything different. I didn't really put together the canine aspect of this, and I feel like that's something they could have pushed further in the design. Maybe do something with the head specifically to make it a little bit different, a little bit more canine, maybe in the jaw or the snout, to just bring that dog aspect out, because I feel like that's a really cool thing about the Alien universe that has since been expanded on, that depending on whatever host is germinating this alien embryo will change how the alien looks. And we get that in Alien vs. Predator, we get that in other alien movies, and I feel like this movie is the one where that idea started, and that's a little more obvious that that's what they were going for. And on top of that, this is the first movie where the alien special effects to actually bring this thing to life don't really hold up. And I do appreciate that even though this is 1992 and CGI is starting to take off, they did stick with very old school techniques of blue screen, using an alien rod puppet for this thing running, and using a guy in the suit for some of the close-ups and animatronics and all these old school in-camera techniques. And I think when they cut to close-ups and they use only parts of the alien, the stuff that's in camera, that holds up. Unfortunately, the blue screen stuff really doesn't hold up, and it's very unfortunate because there are some cool techniques utilized. It's just that the keying is really off. The colors don't match with what's on the alien and the background. The alien looks kind of green in a lot of the shots in an unnatural special effects kind of way. So unfortunately, that really doesn't hold up. And I kind of wish they did more with the POV shot of the alien running through the corridors. The first couple times you see it, it's really cool, but they use that shot way too much, almost like a crutch, because I feel like they didn't have the budget or the confidence in the special effects to show the alien running as often as it needed to, that they kind of relied on this gimmick to get by with limited means. I can understand that to a degree, but at a certain point, you kind of have to mix it up a little bit. And I feel like if they had done more with the alien vision, in the same way that the Predator vision in the Predator movies is very unique, and you have that infrared to really let you know that this thing sees differently than we see, I feel like that would have gone a long way. And while I wouldn't say just copy Predator, I would say just come up with an original design for how this thing sees. An interesting color palette, an interesting wavelength of light. Anything would have been better than just generic Steadicam shots of this thing running through the halls, because at a certain point, it just kind of gets boring. And now we come to what might be my biggest criticism, or at least the thing that pulls me out of the movie the most. And that's that throughout the course of this movie, Ripley has been infected and impregnated with a little alien embryo, and throughout the whole movie you're watching her develop more symptoms, more chest pain, a cough, a bloody nose, and at first it's just kind of a tease that, oh, maybe there's something wrong with her, maybe she did get infected. But later on in the movie she gets x-rayed and it is confirmed that there is something inside of her and it's not human, and sooner or later it's gonna pop out. And while as a through line through the whole movie, I think it works to kind of gradually build the stakes to the ending of the movie when it finally pops out as she's going into the lava sacrificing herself. And I feel like narratively that arc works. I think it's a cool idea, and it's a really good payoff at the end when she dies and she's clutching this thing in her arms and taking it with her down into the lava. That's a really cool moment. I love that scene. However, it does kind of raise the red flag of continuity, where in the course of this movie, she's been there multiple days, weeks maybe. It's kind of vague as to actually how long she's been on this planet, but it's pretty obvious that this thing has been taking way too long to finally burst out. If we're going by the timeline set in the first Alien movie and then what we see in the second Alien movie, it takes maybe a couple days for this thing to grow to the size where it finally bursts out. In this movie, it takes a lot longer, and it wouldn't be as distracting if we also didn't have this dog alien in the movie, where the dog gets infected after Ripley did and somehow pops out and becomes fully grown before Ripley's even has a chance to burst out. The two timelines are definitely not in sync. And I guess you might be able to explain this away where, oh, the dog gestation period is different than a human one, but still the discrepancy is just so clear to me. And I think it's just a case of too many cooks in the kitchen when they're writing this script and when they're coming up with the idea for this movie, just throwing ideas together where the actual timeline of the movie doesn't really work. But that being said, this movie is enjoyable to watch. Like I said, it does take the franchise back to its more grounded horror roots. I like the throwbacks to that. I like the more somber tone. I like the isolated environment. I like the prison atmosphere. In theory, again, in practice, I don't think it fully gets there. But ultimately, I really like the characterization of Ripley in this. I think she's a really cool character. I like how Sigourney Weaver plays her in this. I like that she's a problem solver, that she's constantly thinking about different ways to kill this thing, while at the same time dealing with the fact that there is one inside her, and when she sacrifices herself at the end of the movie, it's super satisfying. It's a great ending, even though it does feel a little reminiscent of the ending of Terminator 2, which I don't think is a coincidence given that James Cameron did Aliens and then Terminator 2 and then this movie comes out. So maybe David Fincher, someone was trying to borrow a little bit of that Terminator 2 finale aesthetic, the liquid metal in the furnaces and all that. So yeah, even though there are some issues with it and there are some problems that I personally have with it, and I don't think it's as good as the previous two movies, not by a long shot, this one I can still pop on and watch and enjoy, and I think it's a perfectly fine conclusion to the Alien trilogy. And if they had just stopped here with the death of Ripley, I think you'd have a pretty solid Alien trilogy. Unfortunately, that's not the case. They did keep making them, and some of them got significantly worse, and that's a review for another day. But now I turn it over to you guys. What do you think about Alien 3? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. As always, I'm Colby, this is my Nerdy Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.